Voice Radio.
Believe it.
Jalisa Smith. We're here talking with Aubry Padmore today from Caribbean Voice Radio. How are you, Aubry?
I'm doing pretty good. What about you?
I'm doing good. And I was reading your personal bio. You're a professional coach, a teacher, an author, and you created Caribbean Voice Radio, which is an online broadcasting platform.
Yeah.
And you're also doing your Elevate Entrepreneur Initiative, your new consulting initiative. So before we get into all that, tell us about your educational background, formal and informal.
Oh, Lord. Well, I'm originally from the island of Barbados, so my educational background stems from the British system of education, where you had to really, learn proper grammar and so on, which I probably broke every rule with that. If you didn't do well, you got a little bit of a whipping from the teacher and that sort of stuff. But in essence, you learn theory and you learn practice back in the Caribbean a lot. So it all kind of helps mold your mind in a way that you can really feel that you can achieve anything. I migrated to the U.S. about 30 years ago, and I went to MCNY for college. I actually had to retake the high school diploma because when I came here, there was some conflict between the level of education in terms of what the Board of Education in New York thought that was prevalent or relevant. And of course, I took the test and passed it with flying colors because some of the stuff seemed a little remedial to me. So then I went from there. I started working in the court system for about 14 years. And during that time, I decided that I would go to school and get a college degree.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So when you came here, you said that the American education system seemed a little remedial, huh?
Well, in terms of what they wanted me to retake my basic English, math, and proficiency. And so I registered for the course, but like the second week during the course when I was doing the math and the English, the instructor asked me where I was from. I told her Barbados. And she said, "You seem to be very knowledgeable about this area. Why are you even here in this class?" And I said, because they told me I had to come back and take my GED. And she sent me ahead to take the test, so I did it and I passed it and the first time out. So that's how I got my GED. And in terms of the educational piece, I don't mean American education is remedial. I mean in terms of why would they have me repeat something that I already learned and that they knew was viable in terms of me moving on to college. So that's why I felt it was a little redundant.
Oh, okay. So moving on from school, talk about your experience working in the court system and what it taught you.
Oh man, that was one of the coolest jobs I ever had. Well, I was very excited when I got started, and I left excited. I learned a lot of things about human nature, a little bit about the law, and I actually had the opportunity to work in a job where I was pretty much administrative support to judges, so it was a very beautiful opportunity for me to not just learn but gain guidance and share some knowledge and receive more knowledge actually than I shared. So that was a beautiful experience in itself.
That's always a good thing. So going from learning about other people and how people interact and how people communicate in the court system, that obviously a lot of times was probably some heavy issues going on. Did that have anything to do with you deciding to create your own community outreach network?
Well,
online?
When I was in the court system, I had the opportunity to meet with a lot of people from the Caribbean and kind of learn what was going on. So actually, Carib Voice Radio started out after the fact that there was a nonprofit community newspaper in the street called Carib Voice newspaper. And I partnered in terms of sharing and learning about media from that newspaper. And when things fall apart with 9/11, a lot of things changed in terms of the shift. In newspapers, people weren't really reading, so as an organization, we really weren't able to put the newspaper out anymore. And I saw, that a change was coming for the internet, so I told the guy, well, why don't I start something relevant to the internet? And he wasn't really into it, so I just started a platform that I felt would continue the mission and the vision of an outreach kind of program. So he was all for it, so we kind of part ways, and I started the internet radio thing.
Well, I commend you for that, because we're learning all the time in school even you can see it. I mean, I'm young, but I'm old enough to be able to tell that the transition from paper to web format is something that you had to be right on time with.
Yeah.
A lot of newspapers have gone down because they haven't moved to online fast enough.
No.
So that took innovation, and that took you had to take a lot of chances with that. So to expound on that, what advice do you have on risk taking?
I mean, the first thing about what I'm doing and what I started doing, it's more a measure of love and consideration for the Caribbean global more than being a money-making venture. When I started out thinking about doing this, actually it's a non-profit organization, really. When I started out, it was more of pushing the passion behind the dreams and goals of others more than what was in it for me. And I still continue with that model because I really believe over the years that people don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so I really put that in practice in terms of what I'm doing with this medium. When I was in the court system, I was making a pretty good pay. And for me, this then became more of a labor of love, passing it on to other people and really looking at what was viable. Because even when I was in the court system, that was also the transition from the big green book where the clerks would enter a lot of information in, and they were really moving over to the computer age. And that's where I got my biggest lesson in terms of what computers could do, because I had the opportunity to take the computers into the system, read up on the manuals, learn a lot of things. So a lot of what I learned was self-taught. And you know they say success is where preparation meets opportunity. And it doesn't really matter what is in a book. What matters is what you do with the knowledge in the book in terms of practice. Because you can read all day long, day and night, but if you don't apply the knowledge from the book, you'll never have that experience of knowing if this actually works. So for me, that was a beautiful thing. In addition to that, being a student at MCNY, one of the prerequisites was that you had to take practice and, you know, kind of take that and merge theory and utilize it to really resolve problems in the workplace. So it all became kind of like a commingling then of vision. And so from that experience, I was able to say, well, let me continue doing this because for me, it's a lot of fun. Bringing people on board, a lot of folks figured out that this was a good thing, and a lot of people were looking for opportunities to launch their own show. So it became a huge collaborative. And people have come and gone and had some experiences that you can't really learn in school. Because when I first started out, I wasn't even live. I kind of manipulated HTML code, which I had to learn by myself too. And I was up on the air one day, and you know, the next thing you know, I met with a company that said, well, we offer live streaming, and we built a collaborative relationship, which was pretty good because I promoted them, they promoted me, and it became a beautiful friendship. And so we continue from that platform. And now we really focus more importantly on community issues and dream building and educating young people in particular what it takes for them to build their dream. One of the fundamental things that I believe in and subscribe to is that when you're in school, you have a job. And your job is to go to school and learn well. As a matter of fact, there was a song about that. And I think the guy said, without education in this whole wide world, there's no place for a little boy and girl. But that is what I feel that the internet allows me to do. The experience has been, because it's a global platform, I have learned so many things from so many different countries and islands that I would never have had the opportunity if this platform didn't exist.
Okay, so from that I get that it's not really about risk taking. It's more about having the confidence to know that you can put into action anything you have a dream of doing.
Yeah, well, everything you can consider is actually a risk, because I mean there's failure and there's success. It all has to do with how you measure success and failure in terms of value and so on. So for me, it's a risk in that when I started, people were like, what are you doing? Nobody's going to listen to the internet. That doesn't make, and people were asking me, well, what's internet radio? And people might have not, it existed before I started, but people may not have heard about it. But once you had the opportunity to share the knowledge with them and the platform with them, then they became more aware of the fact that, hey, this is something that's possible. And when we started, it didn't go to mobile devices yet, and now it's a whole brand new model. So in the sense of development, not just from growing an opportunity to become a strong fiscal generator for businesses and nonprofits, but it's a pretty nifty communication tool in general across the globe and across all platforms, because now you have apps that apply to each platform and each medium. If you have iPhone, you can listen on your iPhone. If you have a Windows-based medium, you can, and even all the way back to the basics of computers. So it's a beautiful thing in that way.
Okay. And just not for you to brag, but just to have people understand how far you've come. Can you tell us how many listeners you get?
Well, our stats suggest that we have about 50,000 monthly that come to our site and listen. But each show, now being a brand new show, we gauge each show by listenership in terms of who comes by during that time and look to see how long they stay. So we use Google Apps and different things like that to kind of check that out. So the variables are different, but that's my basic, because what I discovered is that some people discover that we are on the air and they kind of tap into our broadcast. So that's a whole new medium of listeners that we don't even know how to count in terms of who's listening up from their model and so on. So I always use the reference of 50,000 plus and up and so on.
Okay. Now, you're the main person behind all of this. Of course, you have your help. But can you give us some advantages and disadvantages of just being completely in charge of everything you're doing?
Oh, my God. But, I've always been an entrepreneur. And in the old days, when I was doing stuff like this, people would tell me, oh, you're confused, you're doing everything yourself, you don't really know what you're doing, you should stop. In today's new model, they call it eclectic, and they say, well, you're an eclectic entrepreneur. One of the things that I learned to do in terms of what is advantageous is that if you started, but you teach someone, and I think Maya Angelou, I took this from Maya Angelou's model where she said, if you learn, teach. So everything that I learn, I pass on to someone so that I can have what I call the duplicity factor take an effect. So I don't really have to do everything myself. And using computers and using software that you can pick up, that it's kind of pretty much, some of it is free. You can teach people how to use the software, and you can teach them how to do edits and so on, so you don't have to do that yourself. And then there are always budding entrepreneurs that are looking for qualified opportunities to kind of collaborate. So you say, well, this is what I have and this is what you have, how can we both benefit? So from that kind of framework, then you can now start allocating opportunities and responsibilities, based on that. Now, one of the negative parts of that is that at some point people would start thinking, well, I'm doing all of this work and you're doing all this work, but I think that you should start paying me and so on and different things like that. So it kind of gets gray area a lot. So what I do is I always have a qualified model in terms of responsibility, limits on responsibility, who does what to whom and how and for how long in terms of duration, so that conflict is removed. So that's the other side of the coin. So you're always learning how to build and strengthen new models and so on.
And what are some of the responsibilities that you spread across your team?
Well, editing is one. Like, we do a lot of audio and video, so I share with editing, have other people that do a lot of the editing of the audio. I share responsibility with other people for PR and marketing, in terms of folks that know how to do that. I know how to do that, but I don't want to do everything myself. So in terms of how my mind works and what my vision requires, I allocate a practical and build practical momentum behind each and every piece that I utilize. So everything is a qualified action every single time. So I have somebody doing PR, like for example, tonight we have a show, and every night that we have a show, so I send that to the PR person. They put together the press release, put out the stuff, and so on. Sometimes I would do some of the graphic design, but I wouldn't write the script for the graphic design. Or I may send the audio over and let them use the audio to do the press release and so on. and some college students love the idea, so they want to get on board to be, a part of the whole program, because what it does is allow them the opportunity to learn this new medium, and also give them the opportunity to network, to build opportunity for themselves. So they're gaining momentums in terms of what they're learning in class, and also what they want for themselves. Because what I try to do is, and I do this when I teach also, is to merge what the vision for that person's life is with the information that they have. And what I discover in that is that for the most part, 90% of that is what everyone wants to have happen. Because a lot of students, when they'll say, well, I'm in college, I'm going to have a student loan, and when I leave, what am I supposed to do with this education? There are no jobs. But when you put practice behind that understanding, it becomes more of a palatable thing for them to look at, in terms of saying, well, you know what, I think I can actually use this, and I can actually earn from it. So it's a beautiful adventure in the undiscovered country.
Okay. So can you describe some specific community projects you have going on with your team and your interns, everything that you have going on?
One of the biggest things that we're working on right now, and some of it I can't talk about, we're doing a lot of programs with women and girls and young people, in terms of teaching them how to use this medium to get their message out. Dr. Anita Davis Defoe is a part of our team, and she's the one that's doing a lot of push with the Women and Girls program. She's an author, speaker, and a qualified grant writer. She has raised a lot of money for different organizations. In terms of the United States Virgin Islands YWCA, for example, she was the one that worked the first grant that they received in the existence of the organization. She has flown to Nigeria to create a catalyst for her Women and Girls project, where she included about 300 women into her organization. She's been to Switzerland, United States Virgin Islands, and she's one of the few people that are doing development work that can use their iPhone to call in and broadcast live updates on what they're doing across the world. So these are some of the things that we are doing with this program. Recently we were approached by a group of young people who wanted to, actually very young, between the ages of 5 and 12, who love sports and they love communications, and they want to take this medium and use it as a means of going out and doing interviews and so on. So for me, that's one of the most delicious things that I think can have happen when you see young kids really taking this medium and using it.
Okay.
Does that answer? Did that help?
Yes, that helps. Okay. A lot, actually. So within 10 years, with everything you're doing for the community, what would you like your Career Voice platform to have achieved 10 years from now?
I would like to look back in 10 years and see a couple of things happen. One, I would like to see the practicality at work using this medium and using the collaborative effect, to see Caribbean Global and friends of Caribbean Global use this to measure and build sustainable incomes for themselves individually, and for groups and for governments to start really looking more seriously at what can come from people who are a part of the community. Because entrepreneurship is all about visual possibilities and practical possibilities. And we need to measure the opportunity for growth, sustainability, and development by this means. And I feel that because now everything is moving into a digital medium, I feel that this in 10 years will represent, as we grow and develop and manage capacity, that I would like to see that this become like one premier Caribbean network out there that's really pushing the voice of the locals, the people, the unsung heroes, if you will, because we aren't looking at commercial mediums. There's too much competition and frustration going on in that effort. So I want to birth a developmental plan that can really look specifically at the heroes that are coming up with their vision, the young people who are looking to do something practically, that they don't have to use guns or beat up on each other, beat up on women, beat up on men, or get involved in the effort in a whole brand new mediums where they can look at themselves more fervently as a commodity as opposed to just someone looking for a job. Because one of the things that I learned is that every job commenced with somebody's dream, and then that dream became a line item in someone's budget. So what I want to do is to have the people, young people who are coming up, people who have dreams, to take the practicality and the understanding behind what this medium means as a resource, not as something for you to just, oh, I have a cell phone, let me kill somebody and get the iPhone or do something like that. I want them to take the resource, measure responsibility and value of the resource, and use it to generate personal achievement and fiscal achievement. So that's what I look at in terms of when I say Caribbean and Friends of Caribbean, because in my mind I'm thinking in terms of beyond sand, sea, and surf globally. Everybody needs a relaxation, but people don't have money to go spend. But I want people to look at what is possible locally and what is possible globally, and how collaboration and collaborative efforts can be utilized. That's one of the reasons that we focus more importantly on independent music, because we want to measure the stories, the dreams, the passion, if you will, of those people who are creating those music forms, in order for them to see value and vision and collaborate, grow, and just permeate the universe with what they want to do in a positive manner. It is possible. So that's what my framework and vision is for the next 10 years.
Okay, well, Mr. Padmore, I commend you and I thank you. There are people in the community doing the same things that you're trying to do, but a lot of times these don't go mainstream, these things. I feel like a lot of things that are, on these mainstream commercial stations and the television and the news could be more positive things like what you're doing and what you're trying to put forth, not only in the Caribbean, not only in America, but you have listeners around the world. So thank you for what you're trying to do for our youth and for our entrepreneurs in the world.
But let me turn the tables on you a little bit before we go.
Okay.
Now, when you had an experience to sit with me for about, 2 hours?
2 hours.
3?
2.
2. What was your experience from what you learned?
My experience sitting with you was to never give up on your dreams. Anything is possible. I mean, I even learned that I might have to get into acting a little more than I want to. I'm a more behind the scenes person, but if you really want to do something, then you shouldn't wait around for the opportunity to fall in place. You make the opportunity happen.
You have to,
because it's not just gonna come to you.
And
you have the talent, you have the skill to learn how to do something and get it done.
Yeah, and I was excited about you because you actually got up and did when you were asked. And some people want something, but they're not willing to show up and do what they need to do, and that's the first step in order for you to achieve anything. And so that's why I asked you that, because for me that's reference to say, well, it's working. Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.